This video is to illustrate some inconsistencies and or errors within the StatCrunch software when used in conjunction with MyStatLab for the Ron Larson / Betsy Farber statistics, elementary statistics book, 6th edition. Sean Murray had asked me to send some screenshots, but I felt it would be easier if I just created a video and uploaded it to YouTube and then sent everybody the link. So mainly my concern here is with problems that involve linear regression and then ask a student to create some sort of transformation. As an example, this is item number 9.2.38 from section 9.2, and you'll notice if you read the question, it says use the data shown in the table that shows the number of bacteria present after a certain number of hours. Replace each y value in the table with its logarithm, log y. Find the equation of the regression line for the transformed data. Then construct a scatter plot of x, log y and sketch the regression line with it. What do you notice? Well, the problem here is most students, and myself included, would assume that log without any sort of base attached to it would be the logarithm base 10, or your standard logarithm. However, I found that that's not necessarily the case. A couple of things happen depending on the problem that you're in. For example, in this particular problem, if I go ahead and left click the copy icon and I want to copy it, and I want to either open it in StatCrunch, copy to clipboard, or open Excel, I'll have this for the window for StatCrunch. And you will notice that this last value in the Y column is not written in standard numeration format. However, I will point out, and it happens even if I open it in Excel, which I will do and show you what that looks like. Just be patient. I got a lot moving on the computer at the moment. So I'll bring in the Excel spreadsheet. You'll notice that the last entry in the Y column is also incorrectly formatted. However, if you do happen to copy it to the clipboard, once again you'll see that it has quotation marks around that last number. But if you change the delimiter from comma to semicolon, notice that the quote marks go away. Also with space, the quotation marks disappear, and also with tab. But if I go back to comma, I have quotation marks on the last value. That's something that needs to be fixed. My students, for the most part, are not going to notice that problem when they go to do some sort of linear regression. Next on this list, and we'll go ahead and just reformat the number that's in this so that it will actually work, is if I go ahead and left click stat, come down to regression, and then simple linear, and left click that, I want to go ahead and use number of hours as my x variable. I want to use number of bacteria as my y variable, but I want to use the transformation capabilities of StatCrunch. In this case, and if you remember, it's log of y. If I left click this down arrow, we'll notice that the selection here is the natural logarithm, but it is incorrectly noted as log of y. And in fact, if you look through this list, there is no correct notation for the logarithm base 10 of y. So if we go ahead and left click this and assume that it's going to use the traditional logarithm, and I go ahead and left click compute, I will end up with this linear regression line. And you'll note that the slope is stated as 0.91319921. But if you come back over here and look at the regression line it has a different slope. And in fact, if you look at the y-intercept, it is 5.0651228, which once again, if I come back over here, I can look at the y-intercept and notice that that is incorrect. However, I do have the option of doing a computation, and I can go into data, I can go to compute expression, I'm going to build my expression, and in this case I'm going to do a traditional logarithm, which is going to be log base 10, and then I want to do that for the y column, and then we will go ahead and left click OK, and I will label this as log of 10 of y, and then click compute, and I now have this new column that has the correctly calculated logarithm base 10 of the y value. And if I go ahead and then do the regression line, simple linear, I will use the original x value, but now I'm going to go ahead and use the transformed y value, log base 10, left click compute, and now you'll notice that I have the correct slope and the correct y-intercept. So there's two things going on here. Number one, the problem is asking for log base 10, but yet StatCrunch does not provide that option unless the students use the compute function. And if the students are going to be using this function, and they're going to be using StatCrunch, which I do use in my classes heavily, it should be easily doable to transform the variable correctly. This needs to either be relabeled as ln of y, or it needs to be fixed so that it is the logarithm base 10, and then make sure that it correctly formats the transformation. And just in case you're questioning whether or not that happens every time, if I move to the next, and if I change to similar question, and I go ahead and I copy the data, so let me go ahead and switch that. And now we have a new table. I'll left click the copy, and I'm just going to copy it to the clipboard. And in this case, we'll notice that a 4-digit number is formatted correctly. But if this last digit is a 5-digit, or I should say last number is a 5-digit number, it will format incorrectly. And to be honest, it's not consistent. It happens sometimes, doesn't happen at other times. If I go on to the next question in this sequence, once again, this one has a transformation, and we will end up with incorrect values. But I'm more interested in discussing this next problem because I have my students do this one, because I think it is an incredibly important concept in linear regression. And this will have the same problems. The transformations will be incorrect. However, and we'll open this in StatCrunch, it'll give us a new window. And if I go in and I create the linear regression line, stat, and this happens to be item number 9.2.42, and I come to regression, simple linear, I'll select the x and I'll select the y variables accordingly. I will come down to transformation. Once again, I don't actually have the option of selecting logarithm base 10, but if I were to select this one, and let's be realistic, students will select this one even though this says natural logarithm because it says log of x. Likewise, the same thing happens for log of y. Now, if I go ahead and compute, this gives me a slope of negative 1.3387, which in this particular instance is the correct slope. And that's simply because the slope is going to calculate correctly since I've done the exact same type of transformation on the x variable as I've done on the y variable. However, you'll notice that the y-intercept, according to this linear regression in StatCrunch, is 6.2700652. However, the actual answer in MyStatLab will be 2.723. That's an incorrect value, and that's incorrect because the transformation is actually a natural logarithm and not a logarithm base 10. This is very confusing to my students and is causing great problems because, like I said, I think the transformation of X and Y data is a valuable topic to touch on. Thank you for your time.